When I took my first SAT practice test, I was literally scoring in the 1100s. I remember all my classmates and I taking the PSAT during sophomore year, and when the results came out, everyone was talking about the scores they got, naturally. I'm hearing about people get 1400s, 1500s, that one kid from your English class gets a perfect score, and everyone's just gassing him up talking about it. At the same time, I'm looking over at my PSAT score, I got like an 1130, Bro, I'm in disbelief. I don't even know what to say. I literally felt like lying to all my classmates and friends and say I got like a 1300 or something just so that they didn't think that I was slow. Now, obviously looking back, an 1130 is not even like a terrible score to start at. You get that on the real exam, you're cooked. But in context here, the comparisons just start to get to your head. Let's fast forward 1 year to when I took the real exam. I took my SAT one time and I scored a 1550. Done, end of story. And those same kids I was comparing myself to didn't score nearly as high. They couldn't even break the 1500 threshold. I say all this to prove a point. I'm not a genius. I just came up with a really good SAT study schedule and I committed to it. And the bottom line here is that the longer you stick with this study schedule, the higher your score will be. Let's get straight to it. This is the exact summer schedule that I used to study for the SAT during my sophomore year. I haven't made a single edit to this since back when I was in high school, which is why at the end of the day, it's not the prettiest, but it's organized and it makes sense to me, which is what matters. Let's go column by column and just talk about it, okay? First column over here, let's start with the timings, okay? If you look closely at the top, you can see that my day starts at 10 a.m. Okay, now here's the honest truth. When I was back in high school, this is over summer break, I would wake up every day at around 9 a.m. Okay, some days if I was pushing it like 8:30, usually 9 a.m. But I'd wake up at 9 a.m. consistently. I'd get up, I'd do my morning routine, go eat breakfast, and then start my SAT prep and studying around 10 a.m. Now you see all these like self-improvement, motivation, study videos where people wake up at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and start their day. I'll be honest, when I was in high school, I understood that I needed that 9.5 hours of sleep to be functioning at like peak brain intelligence. If we just scroll down here to the bottom of my schedule, right? You can see that my day ends by like 11:30 p.m. If you're going to bed consistently at just say midnight and waking up at 9 a.m. every single day for weeks on end, that is still 100% productive. You're still having the same number of productive hours as the person who's waking up at 5 a.m. What you don't want to end up doing when it comes to like your timetable is staying up like unnecessarily late, right? You're up till like 1, 2, 3 a.m. just like playing some games with the boys, or you're just like FaceTiming a homie. And then the next day you end up waking up at like 10:30, 11, noon. And then at that point, your whole schedule gets pushed back. For me, I was going to bed and waking up at a consistent time for the entirety of the summer, which is why I feel like it was okay. It worked for me and I got my goal score, right? So let's just keep pushing in the schedule. A lot of people like to consider Sunday to be like the rest day of the week, right? Typically, if you're on summer vacation, Sunday is when you likely don't have anything else going on. If you have like an internship or a job, this is going to be your day off. It's your break day. Now take that thought of like having a break on Sundays and let's just table it to the side for a second, okay? The reason Sunday is advantageous to you is because realistically, you're going to have that free space to do something consistent every single Sunday. The likelihood that other things are gonna show up is very low, which is why we schedule our SAT practice exams on Sundays. Waking up Sunday morning like this and then taking a practice exam is one of the best things that you can do in the long run to make sure that your score is consistently going up. You're actually making progress with your studying. You can see here that I made my practice exams like the first thing that I would do Sunday morning. And when I used to take the SAT like on the old version, it was a much longer exam. It was like a 4-hour test with like that whole essay section and stuff. You don't even have to do that. It's 2 hours for you. Bro, just wake up every single Sunday from now until when you take the exam and do a practice test. While we're on the topic of exams, I also want to give some like really valuable advice when it comes to your mentality around taking a standardized exam. This advice will literally is the blueprint for how you're going to increase your score to the next level. When it comes to taking the SAT, this is usually the very first standardized exam that most people have ever taken in their entire life. You have to understand that when an exam is standardized, that means that every time students take it, whether that's in March or whether that's in December, the exam will feel like the same amount of difficulty. It's designed so that the score that you get if you were to take the exam, say 10 times, is going to be almost the same every single time as a way to ensure fairness. Now, honestly, this is in your best interest because it means that if you're scoring a 1500, chances are that if you take the exam like on multiple different test dates, you'll get that 1500 score consistently and you won't just have a bunch of random homies who just show up to the exam, take it like 3-4 times and are able to just have like a magical 200-point spike in their score. That's just not how it works. Practically, when when it comes to our studying, this means that the more passages, practice questions, reps in general that you do, the higher your final score will end up being. The secret to getting a 1600 isn't some specific test taking technique. It's literally just that your score is directly correlated to the volume of studying that you're able to do. And if you want to get a 1600, that means that if you're able to cover more volume, just do more practice tests, more passages than everyone else, you will have your score get to that top level. Now, when you go to take your actual SAT exam, it's true, some exams are harder, some are going to be a little bit easier. But people make that difference out to be more than it actually is. Because of the way that they set up the curves, it's meant to be fair and even, and it's honestly not even something worth thinking about. You can only control what you can do, right? So focus on your studying and getting your prep to that maximum level by doing these consistent Sunday SAT practice exams. Now, the rest of this week, from like Monday to Saturday, is when we do the actual study work, because you can't just spam SAT practice exams and then expect your score to go up without also doing the legwork at the same time when you're focusing on those specific reading comprehension skills or learning those math formulas that are going to get you those points. Now, as we just dig into Monday real quick, I have this thing, it says AAN, that is a science fair competition, okay? I'm a huge believer of holistic college app preparation. I'm not saying that your entire summer schedule should just be SAT 8 hours a day every single day. Notice how I'm able to integrate my other extracurriculars into my study schedule as well. So for me, this here is science fair. Applying to this competition was a big deal. So I'm over here writing like my science research paper. I'm planning for it in the mornings on Monday. And then in the afternoon, I get into my SAT exam prep. In particular here, on Monday, I wrote SAT exam review. This is when I go over the practice test that I took on Sunday, and I look at all the mistakes I made, I look at trends if there's certain types of problems that I'm consistently getting wrong, and I make notes of everything. What is equally as important as doing these actual like SAT practice exams is doing the review, because there's no point if you don't go and learn from your mistakes. So many people get lazy when it comes to actually like going back through their exam because it's annoying, right? You have to look at these problems, you're like, oh bro, like I know how to do that correct. If you're not taking the time to actually tailor your upcoming study schedules based on what you're getting wrong, you're not going to have that rapid growth of your score that you're looking for. Even if the mistakes you're making are just careless mistakes, acknowledging that, okay, I'm making all these careless mistakes in the math section or I'm misreading some passage, I need to get better at that thing. Now you have some kind of goal that you can direct yourself towards. Maybe you slow down when you're taking the math section. Maybe you actually take the time to like use your cursor and like underline the text as you're going as a way to like focus up. Also, just practically speaking, on Mondays, I felt like I wanted a little bit of break from taking my practice test on like Sunday. You get to switch it up a little bit by doing something different in the mornings. So that's the way I'd look at it. Moving to Tuesday, this is when I'd get into the actual SAT content prep. So you can see here, I'm preparing for like the reading section of the exam in this morning, where I'd literally wake up, crack open like a certain textbook, I'd have some skill I'm trying to learn or a certain number of passages I'm trying to get to, and then I wouldn't stop my study session until I got whatever goal I had set done. If I say on here I'm gonna study for, you know, an hour and a half, but I'm going through the prep, it's going super smooth, I'm locked in, and I want to end up studying for 2.5 hours, that's totally fine. This should just be like a baseline for you to know exactly what you need to do every day of the week. And then again, after my morning studying, I'd eat some lunch, and then boom, I'd go straight into my science fair work to kind of continue what I was doing the previous day. Wednesdays, I do something completely different. Here, I wrote like essay writing, and this is because during this particular summer, I was actually trying to learn more about like college essay writing. I was reading some essays online, doing a little bit of drafting on my own, so I wrote down like essay writing. Honestly, if you're scheduling out like your entire summer, you don't need to be doing SAT prep every single day. Sometimes it's good to even have like one day in a week off, just so that you can, one, do like other extracurriculars, right? Which is great. You can actually have the time to build like a nonprofit or some kind of business up. But at the same time, you also need like a little bit of digestion time for your mind to grab all those concepts. You don't want to just study for like multiple months on end every single day and then get completely burned out by the time the exam rolls around. If you want to actually get that volume in to get your score to a 1600 like we just talked about, you need to pace yourself over like several weeks to months time to really get your score up there and also be like in the mood when the exam comes up. Thursdays, I would actually start my morning studying for the SAT essay section, which doesn't exist anymore, so it's one more good thing for you. And then in the afternoons, I'd go into my SAT math preparation, right? Now, when it comes to studying for the SAT math section, you gotta understand that your math scores need to be perfect every single time. And for most people, if you actually just learn the math concepts, it's not that hard, bro. It's honestly not that hard. You can get your score to that like 750 plus range. That last couple points is just a matter of nailing down your careless mistakes and understanding that getting through that entire math section in 10 minutes is not the optimal way to approach it. You have to learn to slow down on every problem, double check your work every time, get to the stage where you just don't make careless mistakes anymore. That is what separates those people who score like that 15-20 range and they end up getting like a 760 or 770 on the math section from the people who get the 1550 with that perfect score on the math section. That just looks so much better. And then once we get to Friday, I'd go back into my reading section preparation. Notice how in the span of a week, I have these 2 different sessions to study the reading section and then only 1 to study math. It takes longer to build up those reading section skills and that reading comprehension. You need more volume practice there, but for the math section, once you just get it down to essentially you're near 800, focusing on those last little errors, you just want to have some kind of weekly prep to continue practicing those good skills, but you don't need any more volume than that. Again, on Saturdays, I'd keep the day open just because it's the day before I'm taking the practice exam on Sunday, and then also to have the ability to, if you actually want to take a little bit of a break like we talked about earlier, right? We tabled the break from Sunday, moving on to something like Saturday. That's when you can hang out with your friends, you can, hit the gym, do something a little bit more useful with your extracurriculars, and then you can loop back around to on Sunday doing that practice test once again. You notice that in my schedule, it goes down to around like post lunch, 4:30 p.m. Okay, Pratik, what about the entire evening, right? You literally have from 5 all the way till you go to bed to do things productive. For me, during the summer, this is when I would grind my nonprofit out. I would pretty much spend like every single evening in this week doing some work towards my nonprofit, doing some kind of outreach, planning what those next steps were. This is a great block to just work in and do some kind of a passion project while you're simultaneously studying for the SAT. It's like you kind of cooked your brain in the morning and maxed it out doing a bunch of reading passages. Now at this point, you can put your mind towards something else, do some creative work, and it doesn't feel like you're burning yourself out. Now, a huge part of actually studying for the exam is understanding when your final exam test date is going to be, right? You want to have some kind of a final test date that you registered for so that you can back plan for your exam. And I want to show you in these like other tabs on this planning sheet exactly how I did that. Hey, right before we get into that though, look at on the side, like I just have like random notes here. These like different science fair competitions here. Notice how like I put school homework on my to-do list and it's nowhere in my schedule, because it should be like the lowest priority thing during the summer. I have a bunch of students email me that they have like summer homework and stuff to do. Bro, just figure it out last minute in like August right before your school starts. You shouldn't use like priority SAT prep time to do some like garbage work like this. Instead, if you're gonna apply to something like a science fair competition or some extracurricular you have, that's much more worth your time. All right, so this is the spreadsheet that I use to plan right before the exam. Okay, there's a lot to take in. Let's dissect this a little bit more. So first things first, you see 2 different test days here, right? That's because when I was taking my SAT, I was also studying for the SAT subject tests. These don't exist anymore, but this is just the way I did it. It's something great that we can learn from. So on the left-hand side here, we can see like the dates. This was leading up to my SAT exam. I took my SAT exam on December 5th. And in that month before, from between my last like subject test to my actual exam, so between November 7th to December 5th, I was completely locked in on just SAT exam prep. Literally the day after my first subject test ended, I have this planned SAT box where I just planned out exactly what I was going to study, what practice tests I was going to take, everything that I was going to do for the next month leading up to the following exam date. The first thing to keep in mind, right? Look at the number of practice tests that I'm taking. Right? So within the span of 1 month leading up to my exam, I took 7 practice tests and I was doing 2 practice tests every single week. And these were always full-length practice tests, just like the actual exam. I wasn't breaking them up into little pieces. You want to try to create an environment around you that feels just like what the actual test would feel like. Take the exact length breaks they're gonna offer you, pretend like it's just like the real test with whatever water you're drinking or snacks you're eating. And then within the week, I'd have my actual studying that I do to keep the review up. So what I do is on Sundays is obviously practice test day like we talked about. On Mondays is when I do my, what I call like focused English prep, where if there was certain topics that I was trying to learn more about within reading, so for example, like within like the reading passages that they give you, if there are certain question types that are really hard or certain types of text that they give you that are just more difficult to read, I'd focus specifically on prepping for those during these days. And since it was the day after my exam, I'd also be able to use like my results on that last practice test to gauge what I would exactly study. And then the following day on Tuesday is when I was studying. At the time, they had like the reading versus the writing section, right? So for you, just the reading section, I do passage prep. And if you look at like exactly like what I'm notes I have here, right? I had like a random textbook I found online. Okay, I'm gonna do writing lesson 4 from that textbook. I'd plan down to exactly what I was going to get done that day in every single one of these blocks. And Wednesdays for me was like a relatively free day during the school year, which is why I would also do my second practice exam of the week on Wednesdays. And again, some Wednesdays, bro, I'd be exhausted coming back from school after grinding on like some clubs or my science fair project for a little bit. I did not want to take the test, but I still did it. Look at this spreadsheet, man. Do you see how there's not a single strike through, a single red mark anywhere on this? Every single practice test I have listed from the math subject test, I was literally doing like 20 of these in the month before my exam, to every single practice exam that I had for the SAT. I did all of it. I didn't miss a single day. That's the level of dedication that got my score to increase over 400 points from the 1130 on my PSAT to the 1550 on the real test. And then we get into Thursday where it's the same deal, right? We're just doing more reading prep. And at this point, like, I'm feeling very, very good about the math section. So I'm doing like these maths essentially practice tests, which I'm getting that extra prep in. I don't need any more like super focused studying. Sure, on like Saturdays, like you see, like for my at the time when I was studying for like my subject test, I was also doing a little bit of like regular SAT prep. But bro, like once you get to this top stage, you're doing 2 practices a week. You don't need to do any extra math prep once you're getting to the stage where every test you're having that 800 score. And to double down on that point one more time, I don't want to drag this out any longer than it needs to be, but on these 7 practice tests, I believe 6 out of the 7 I got an 800 on the math section. And that's kind of the benchmark that you want to have before the exam. A lot of people, what they do is they feel like they get an 800 on like 1 or 2 practice exams, and they think that they're there. But if you actually look at all of your practice exams holistically, are you getting that 800 consistently? Because if you're not, these like practice exams are exactly what the real exam is going to be like. And if you're not getting to 800, you're probably not going to get that perfect math score. I just realized that I didn't explain exactly what these acronyms are. So like if you see like CB number 8, right? That stands for College Board Practice Test number 8. That's free, like from the Khan Academy website. I'd literally organized exactly what tests I was going to take as well. And then like some of these are just like the College Board, they sell like a little book with practice exams. And then even like up here, like this is like the Barron's practice book. Like I'm not endorsing any of these like specific brands for you to go do, but the College Board ones are fantastic. They're literally free on the Khan Academy website. Abuse them. You just want to do random passages as extra like volume practice. You could even like go ask ChatGPT to come up with like an SAT reading passage and questions and try doing that. I haven't personally split tested that technique, but I feel like it would give you some reasonable prep to go off of if you don't even want to dig through like internet archives for it. When you're leading into like your final prep week for the exam, personally, I just did these 2 practice tests because that was all I had left. I'd pretty much exhausted every resource that was out there. If you want to do something like 3 practice tests in that final week, just to have like every other day you're doing 1 exam, you're in the mood, and then your test day just feels like not even a test day. It's just 1 more practice exam in that week. I think that's totally reasonable. The day before my exam, I literally just had, what does it say? 1 reading passage, 1 writing passage, 1 textbook passage, and some good sleep. That's all you need. Like the day before your exam, you're not trying to burn yourself out here. You're just slowly waning off a little bit right before the exam so you feel nice and rested like you would before like a sports competition. And then boom, the next day you get up and you go and you take your SAT exam. In the final tab that I have, this is like my PSAT prep, which is just going to show that I use this strategy so consistently. I got National Merit Scholarship off of PSAT. Look, I did the same thing here where I was doing 2 practice tests per week, and you can see how I organized them, exactly what tests I was going to take, when I was going to take them in this month leading up to the exam. And then boom, test day comes around, you get that perfect score you're looking for, and you just move on. Now, when I studied for the SAT, I kind of took like a put all your eggs in one basket approach, where I used like all of my good exam prep material to plan to take the exam 1 time and get the score I wanted. That's what I always highly recommend to people, because if you just look at like the way that my whole study schedule was organized, right? A lot of my prep also happened during the school year as well, which is like during 11th grade when all of your extracurriculars, all your classes are arguably the hardest they'll ever be. This pressure is just piling in on you. You don't want to be in this point where you have to compromise those things to study for the test, and then you don't get the score that you want, and then again the following semester you have to spend another 2-3 months prepping, reviewing. You just don't want to be in that situation. Aim to take the exam 1 time, get the score you want, and then just be done with this whole SAT business. Feel free to follow me on Instagram as well and ask about any questions you might have. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been your boy Pratik. Peace.